Start with the pledge allegiance for our special meeting for budget crunching. It's Tuesday, October the 8th. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you guys for getting up to Tuesday morning to help us do some crunching. We have our new budget sheet that shows that we are 139,851 off still after the department heads went through their budgets and made their cuts. So that's a little better than what I thought it was going to be. So I'm happy about that. That the departments did their due diligence, and I will say that I know that's a little different than what we normally do, but I think that's the right way to do it. We're not micromanaging their offices and telling them where they have to cut. They're choosing where to cut because they run their offices and we don't. And I think that it's the right way to do things. I know it was a little bit different, and some people were on board with that. Some people did not like that. But that was the mindset of why we needed to do that. And I appreciate you guys voting to do that because that's the way it should be done. All right, we will start today the Health Nurse Managed Clinic. Health Department is here because their levy, their budget does not balance. And in the state of Indiana, it's against the law to have an unbalanced budget. So everybody has to balance. So you are first.
But I will say that Kathy did unappropriate $15,000. It's not in this sheet yet
Okay.
because I haven't advertised before I put it in.
Okay, so unappropriated $15,000.
Yes,
Okay, in order for your
So
budget to balance.
yes.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, well, this is kind of your problem, but I will ask you does it come out in the savings account?
No, this is,
It's a
she,
local health maintenance.
it was on,
Local health and maintenance. I know everything's changed for you guys. We're doing something kind of new.
That was from the local health maintenance.
yeah, and it's from a salary line that they're gonna have that position, but it's going to a part-time position instead of.
You don't need that money, that essentially.
Okay,
They left some in there to finish out the year, but
okay. Okay, so yours will balance.
once I do that entry. then I-
Good deal. You know, and we're not in charge of your budget. That's your thing to do. Our only job is to pass it or not pass it and just to make sure that it balances, it has to balance. State law. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't allow you to do an unbalanced budget, so. And she has to advertise that in order for that to happen. You have plenty of time for that to be done. Okay.
It's going in this week and then we can.
Yeah, we had a discussion at the AIC thing about that too, about, our newspaper.
I know.
Let's say like, for instance, if the newspaper, there's going to be some things in the legislature about that where you can start advertising. We think it's going to happen because we will no longer have a local paper, maybe the first of the year. And then you have to advertise it in the local paper by state law. Well, what if you don't have a local paper? Like Rising Sun, for instance, doesn't even have a local paper anymore. So they need to get up with the times with the state laws on how you advertise things like that. It should be able to be advertised on a website for your county because everything is done that way now. And a lot of people don't read the paper. But the old school way was to put it in the newspaper and have it in writing. And that's probably going to change next year, which I hope it does, because that's somewhat cumbersome. When you have like a lot of people have papers that come out daily in the big city. Well, ours comes out once a week. So you have 2 weeks before you can do anything. Your hands are kind of tied to do things, and sometimes it needs to be done quickly. All right. Did you guys have anything else you need to tell us? Or?
Just making sure that, everything, that you don't have any questions, because sometimes we do get confused with nurse managed clinics, so
Yeah.
we're just kind of here to clarify.
Yeah.
Make sure everything's.
They are not the nurse manager.
Yeah, I know, I do. I get it mixed up myself.
Who pays your insurance? Your liability, your insurance? Do you guys pay that out of yours or is that a county?
It's a lot smaller.
Yeah. I think I think nurse managed clinics pays.
Yeah, they pay,
Yes.
Freebies.
yeah, they pay.
Ours is a lot smaller deal.
Yeah.
Just talking a couple of nurses. Reading the health officer is taken care of somehow through the.
He got a grant of some kind that he,
No, that's.
That's not-
clinic.
the
That's
35,
clinic. Remember, we had that confusion last year where that got put in the health department budget for the nurse managed clinics malpractice for free. And so we had that line item in there. And so just to simplify things, it just got paid out of the health department. But that was a one-shot deal. That's got nothing to do with us.
Your stuff is almost as confusing as ours.
Yeah, that did get pretty screwed up, and
yeah, it
he
came,
came pretty close to, where he would have had to have gotten different insurance that would have had tail insurance coverage. And, anyway, that got taken care of, but
I guess I need to do the minutes. All right, well, thank you guys for getting that squared away, getting it taken care of.
so I guess the only other thing is we've gone, what, 2 years now, kind of in arrears because our 1159 fund is non-reverting. So, I mean, who has control of that in the future? Do you guys have control of that or DGLF or?
Your 1159 fund.
Yeah, our regular fund, our regular fund.
the 1159, you're talking about the funds that just stay in there that are, you don't, if they're not appropriated for that year, and then they go back to your
Right.
ending balance, so
They're
to
not
speak.
reverting and go back to the.
So if something
Essentially,
comes,
we don't have any way to approve any type of bigger balance to save for things of that nature. That's the way the council sees it.
so
I'm looking
what
at. the
he's asking on
1159.
1159, that money does not go back into the general fund, it just kind of stays in there.
It stays in your fund because it's yours.
Yeah, and it basically accumulates, so if there is something that you want, say next year you're saving for this product, then
Well,
you're
we're
just
talking
gonna have to
about,
ask for
talking
an
to Jackie
appropriation.
about doing something in the long run over 3 or 4 years on a truck. There's actual time and let's see, this year, for the 14,000 some is all budgeted for killing. The rest of it,
There's no reason you're gonna ask.
money that was in it, yeah.
Right,
So the year before, we've gotten $263,000 in 23.
Mhm.
In 24, it was reduced down to $14,000. What that did was that reduced all of our accumulating monies that have been carrying over to $14,000. So
No reason.
just curious how that's a huge drop in the tax
See,
levy.
that became a positive over the years because of, for example, COVID testing and things of that nature. I don't remember exactly what the COVID tests or whether it's COVID vaccinations, but
Yeah.
basically the health department was paid to do that.
Yeah.
And then also they were able to bill federal government, insurance companies and things of that nature. So we had actually accrued a balance
Yeah.
over the years, but that got diminished because, our levy, our tax allotment was only $14,000 for the whole year. I think our budget is what, 260 or something for 2024.
Yeah, 254. Are they able to create a line item in their budget for capital expenditures?
we did in a couple of your budget, we added the capital expenditures.
And it wasn't the 11,
It wasn't.
it was the health first funds. We did that.
When we talked to Jackie, she said just do that each year along the way for whatever.
Yeah.
Your 3-year plan or something like that.
Yeah, have a line item where that money goes into that so that
Yeah, like-
it's somewhat spoken for. And then,
Whatever,
But every year it's gonna
$15,000 or
go,
something.
that line item will go back because it'll go back. If you have this amount appropriated and you don't use it, it's not gonna carry over to 25. You're gonna have to, you see what I'm saying? So
yeah,
am I confused or?
is that because of this, largely
Because it won't, it's not like a rolling number. It's, because the
Yeah.
appropriation was just asked for 1 year.
Okay.
So if they do not use it, then it's gonna go back to your
Oh,
big.
you really do have a problem with how
So
to say it then, don't you?
Well, it would be saved and then, let's say in 26, you want to buy a truck, is that
Now
what you
you're
said?
talking maybe 3 years.
3 years.
Okay, 27, 28. then that's when you're gonna ask for that, an appropriation at the beginning of the year, not necessarily in your budget, but you're gonna ask for that appropriation in January, so you can buy whatever it is you've been saving.
Can we do that over a 3-year period instead of just 1 year
Yeah, you can let that money sit in there. I mean, it's,
and just have it allocated just to that?
Are you guys using like a Jackie to do your budget? Because I mean, honestly, we don't have anything. You're asking us questions, which
yeah,
we don't have anything to do basically with your budget. So, but I did see that you have the ability to go out and hire a Jackie.
According to Indiana code, yeah.
Right.
I think you did
She
speak
just
to her.
came in and went over some things with us.
We just had a phone conversation.
Okay.
We
Did you
had
put something like that in your budget though, for,
Yeah.
to cover you for next year?
made a suggestion
Yeah.
that, you know, if we're gonna buy a truck in 3 years or a vehicle in 3 years, accumulate some monies that can't be taken away or used against our tax levy to reduce our tax levy dollars. So it won't be used for that. But our concern was, when do we know, who notifies us that we're gonna be reduced from $263,000 1 year to $14,000 the next?
Yeah. So about $8,000 for the first
That's huge.
tax installment, 6 for the other, you know.
That's the state of Indiana. I know that doesn't come
Yeah.
through us.
See, that's what I'm
We
saying.
did,
Not,
yeah.
not that we're not in it. We have to
We just have to
include
make
this,
sure
but
that.
we can't,
yeah,
we can't sit here and give them advice. That's,
we
they're
have no
supposed to do
con- we
that.
have no
I don't-
control.
You're asking why it was reduced so much.
Yes.
Yeah, and that
There's
That
no
would
way
be
for
the
us to
Who
do
state.
does
that.
that? I mean, this,
State of Indiana, evidently, 'cause you're funded by them.
Yeah, that, they have no
we're
control
not
over
funded
that
by
of
the
the
state.
Uh-uh.
Yeah. That's the nurse management.
Yeah, we're funded by you guys and different grants and things of that nature.
Yeah. We have no control.
But as far as the tax levy, we have nothing over
No.
that.
No, we don't do anything.
That comes from DLGF.
Yeah.
The recommendation.
Yes.
So only the nurse managed clinic, which is tab 15, is funded by the state. Tab
It's a
14
grant. It's rural health.
4014.
and 14 is funded by the county.
That's not in the general.
No, 1159, they're the health department. And the county does do some on the Health First account on 1161. But as far as the nurse managed clinic, which is a whole different fund, which is 4014, that is funded strictly by the state.
What about 1168, 1206?
1168, 1206, those are all
They're
grants
grants.
that
Those
they
are
have
grants.
gotten.
County Health, 000,
No, that's not a.
1161.
1161 is Health First.
Health
That's
First
new.
Indiana.
That's what they started last year.
That's a grant as well.
Well, we match some of it.
It
We
makes
get,
them fun.
we get a percentage
it's
back. We don't affect the grant at all.
Can I just ask a couple quick questions? The partnership donation for 92,000, 92.5, where is that going? What's it going for?
It's going to like the YMCA, it's going to Child Advocacy Center, it's going to Infants in Bloom. We are partnering with different organizations. And that's through the Health First Fund of Indiana, 1161. And so we give these monies so that they can provide services to communities, our communities, Richland County.
So for example, those 80 memberships,
Mhm.
I think that were granted early in the year,
Right.
this past year probably came from those
It
monies.
did. It
Okay,
did, yes.
okay.
And the 92 is for 25. You know, what you're talking about was for this year, 24, the 21,000
Right.
that we donated for those 80 scholarships for children.
In a nutshell, 164610.2.2. It basically goes through the whole thing, spelling out, basically that you're gonna be having some will be 60%, 40% as far as what the state's interested in having you do. Things of that
Where to spend it?
Pardon?
Where to spend that?
nature. Yeah, not necessarily where as much as what category.
Okay.
Like core
Yeah, yeah.
services. Like we
Core
have to
services.
provide core
Yeah.
services.
And my second question was on the printing and advertising. There's no history here, so it shows no expenses for 2022, none for 2023. Doesn't show any budgeted for 2024, and there's $34,000 requested for
Okay.
2025.
I can explain that. Well, first of all, Health First Fund's only been for 1 year, so
Okay.
they didn't have a budget in 22 and 23. So 24 is the first year that they have a budget.
Okay.
And that advertisement was general advertisement, which we didn't do very much. Health First has tells us where to place our monies in their budget items. I budget to you and I budget to them. Somehow we've got to meet in the middle. What this is we are going to have a digital sign placed outside the health department. And so those categories, the category they wanted that placed into was printing and advertising. So that is a $50,000 item, but we're budgeting for $34,000 out of Health First funds.
And every bit of that digital sign will be non-1159 dollars.
It's
So none of that will be county tax dollars. We approved some bucks from this year's 2024's Health First Indiana. We're going to accrue some from next time. We picked up 20 bucks just by asking about it from one of the grants. We asked if, how did that go? They wanted us to
it's the immunization.
earmark
grant,
money
yeah.
through the immunization grant. We already had that going. So I just mentioned to Kathy, I said, well, go ask them if we can use that for advertising for a sign for immunizations then.
And we're gonna
Call,
submit it.
piggyback. Yeah, there was 20,000 more bucks. You're just in the right place at the right time in the state. Sometimes it works. So basically, we're going to be paying for that thing after this next round of Health First Indiana with all non-Sourceland County taxpayer dollars.
Deal.
Yeah, I'm assuming the office equipment, the capital layout on the next page, which is about, was it, 40, almost $50,000, 48 grand. That's just getting the offices up and running, walls built, furniture, 4-drawer file cabinets.
Yeah, it's just.
There's about 50 grand there.
Purchases, big major purchases that we need to make. And they tell us how much of that, of the monies that they're gonna give us, 10% is gonna have to go into that account. And we have to say, what are we gonna use that account for? Or those dollars for? So, you know, we got local telling us, we got state telling us, so we just kind of figure it out. So, and that's, they tell us 10% is gonna go in the capital funds.
There's actually quite a bit going on right now, if you think about it, because you're doing the regular health department stuff. You're also doing this huge grant for the state of Indiana. Of course, every county in the state of Indiana has one time to sign on. We're gonna see how it works. I mean,
Yeah.
That's kind of why
it's
we're.
not, it's not a
It's
given.
pretty new. That's why there's no history.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And,
saying.
yeah, there's
So
no.
I'm assuming that was all upfitting for
Yeah.
new offices that you just are not where they need to be. Because it was 50 grand, it's pretty substantial.
No, it's not.
It's not. It's 40, it's 18.5 in office equipment, and I put my glasses on.
That is-
$30,000 in capital layout.
Okay,
So
the 18,000 is because in the year 2025 in October, all computer systems have to be updated. Every single one, they are going to be out of date by October 2025.
But the 30 is listed as capital.
Capital, yeah, there's two buckets.
Net capital is probably, part of that's gonna be coming back toward the signing. That's 10%. They'll allow you to do as much as 10% off of these grants each year for that capital setback. You don't have to spend it that year. It's non-reverting.
So that's the sign money, and the 34 grand is not the sign money?
I have to look at that.
34 is the side money.
So 65 grand in total. Sounds like a hell of a sign.
No, not from that.
It's gonna cost 50, he said.
Not from that.
And that's,
There's another 20 that just basically came from the state, but the state will be approved.
Yeah.
There was another, 14, there's gonna be 14, which was 10%, but we were able to use 10 of that. So we just put these increments of money away for that. And in fact, the state with Indiana Department of Health is like, you guys don't have any kind of signage. You have a newspaper that's gonna close. You don't have a local radio station. All you have is what Facebook.
I can see the problem there.
Yeah.
And the county pays your staff medical benefits, right?
Yes.
yes,
What are your increases, starting with the health officer moving down? What percentage did you guys put in for your increase? I'm sorry?
10%.
How do you justify a 10% increase?
Well, as for your conversation we had back in May,
I'm asking on an individual basis, what are you basing a 10% increase on?
Mostly his involvement's increased 10%.
How so?
You have more things
because
to take care
we've
of.
got more things going on in the health department than we did in 23.
So everybody was 10% across the board?
No, the administrator was 15%, and that was because that was low anyway.
I
And
think
plus,
15,
that,
11,
my
15.
position has
Okay.
increased
Uh,
dramatically.
Let's start with the health officer. That's you, correct? Who's the health officer?
So that would be free.
And he was 10%.
Yeah.
And the administrator is what person? And how long have you worked there?
Year and a half,
And so we're giving you a 15% increase.
yes,
That's what you're putting in for.
yes.
That's
That's
what,
what the-
that's what the board
That's what the
recommends.
board recommended.
And how did they, my question is, because we had some seriously inflated increases throughout the entire county. So
Well,
I want to understand,
The
when
30.
we say 15%, I don't know of a 15% increase. So what's the justification for 15%?
As per our conversation in May at one of the council meetings,
It's not,
you said, once someone is trained, we said, we want to keep these employees, we want to get these employees up. Between the months of April and August of last year, there were only four full-time positions in the health department that were all replaced in one fashion or another. One fellow was let go, the other people scattered to better jobs, higher paying jobs, and one thing or another. So we started from scratch. So Kathy had no experience in a health department. So she's put in multiple hours watching Zoom meetings on all components of the health department. She's worked really hard on that, and we felt as if she is trained up. Our environmentalist was the same situation. He had about 6 years' experience, but it was more municipal drip systems and all that.
okay, well, let me just stop. So this is where I'm going with this. You're saying she's all trained up. What are you comparing her all trained up to?
All trained up to be able to do all this stuff, have the knowledge of doing all this stuff, being able to interact in the Department of Health, being able to take care of finances.
So that wasn't a part of the original job description, that when she walked in, that she was supposed to work with Indiana Health?
Yeah, it would be. It's not the type of thing that was before. I mean, you're also working with a grant. It's a $300,000 grant. Finding services that you're supposed to promote, finding programs that you're supposed to do in that nature. So it's a little bit different than 2 years ago.
And the health first was not the administrator's job in 23 because there was no health first fund.
That didn't actually get,
It wasn't even implemented when I first got there.
it was Senate Bill 4 until July.
So
So
I,
that was-
there is a difference in what my job description is and what it was before. And there was no way to know that job description because it hadn't started yet when I was hired.
Okay, so just in your register salary, what is, not your register, your county nurse salary?
That's 11%.
Yeah, it's up $2 an hour.
So what,
11%.
that's another 10%. I mean,
Environmental
you
health,
had a significant increase just in salaries.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As per our conversation.
And I know you keep saying your board manages your individual employees. They give you the recommendation. You can't fall back on the council and say, because of council's recommendation, Because-
The recommendation was to get trained up.
The council doesn't.
And that- right. So my question, all these people are now trained up. So next year, are we going to see another 10%?
Probably see the 3% or whatever you get.
The health department this year is not the same health department as it was last year and the years before. And I know you don't know that because you don't even know who we are sometimes.
Nope.
So we are doing a lot more things now than we've ever done before. And I know that because I know what was happening before I got there. And I know what's happening now. And
The county population hasn't grown though, so I mean, the incidence or incident rate, whatever it might be, can't be dramatically different.
well, it depends on whether what you were doing before, how much were you providing before? And how much are you providing now? That's
I
what we
guess
have to do.
that's
It's not the population.
I guess that's what Matt's asking is, what's the rationale behind it? I mean, it's a little unusual to hire someone to do a job, albeit has evolved over the course of 12 months. And then see that job change 15, 20% and validate a pay step change of that rate.
You know what?
When the incident rate may or may not have changed. Now, if the incident rate, because you're offering new services, you fixed 10 people last week on a weekly basis average, and now you're addressing, helping 15 people. So the activity level has increased.
Well, you're minimizing our services.
I'm not,
No, no, it's not
No, I-
minimized.
I don't know how many, I'm not,
You can't always put it in numbers.
I
I mean,
think you
like
should do.
You should.
five this year and 10 this year means that you're doing more or less. We're doing different things and more things than the health department has done in the past. More services provided. We're going out making partners that we had never had before. So we're really working at trying to not just what the health department does, but partnering with other organizations that's making a huge impact on this county.
Yeah, I wouldn't
And
diminish,
if
I wouldn't
we
diminish.
weren't partnering, it wouldn't be happening.
Kathy, I wouldn't diminish that at all. I think that's great. I guess what I'm asking is if there's additional partnering, there would be additional incidents, activity, productivity. I mean, to say, hey, I'm working with Todd today and I'm going to start working with Kim tomorrow, but Todd and I don't do anything different and Kim and I don't do anything at all just because we have a partnership doesn't mean anything. Now, if I add Kim to the mix and we address 10 new incidents and my productivity, my outcomes have increased, then I have some rationale that the job has changed. It's gotten more complex. There's more outcomes, more
That
positive
wasn't
outcomes.
necessarily-
I guess that's what I'm looking for.
That wasn't necessarily the rationale with Senate Bill 4. What the rationale was to put these dollars in because Indiana was very, very poorly
Low on the health
financed.
spectrum.
Yes, we were very low on the totem pole as far as financing from state government.
Yeah.
Local health departments. So they're basically offering up that you need to try these services. If that's not going to work, we're going to backtrack and we're going to try another direction. And that's basically what was going on this year and 24 and for 25 will be the same thing with Health First Indiana. Now, to be able to do that, number one, we need a staff that's not going to be changing every 5 seconds.
Totally agree.
And so once you find the right people, we were very fortunate. I mean, we have been very fortunate on these positions we filled in that we have dedicated, intelligent, hardworking people for these positions. Therefore, they've been trained up, I would call it. And I think they should be compensated. We're going to hang on to this.
So
And
I,
I'll give
so I,
you-
so I,
I'm going to give you an example.
can I just respond to what he just said? Because here's what I'm after. I mean, Senate Bill 4, Senate Bill 192, whatever the Senate bill is. They take our tax dollars, they put them in a pile, and they force them on people and they spend them or they don't spend them. Sometimes good things happen, sometimes good things don't happen. So I don't fall back on the law. I personally fall back on outcomes and productivity. Now, being a layperson, not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, and in no way, shape, or form do I want to diminish what you do. I would just suggest that next year when you come, have some idea of the outcomes that you created in 2024 and then the outcomes that you created in 2025 so that you can rationalize and increase whatever it might be in 2026.
That's a great.
There has to be some sort of measurement versus the state gave us money and they'd like us to do good things, which I'm somewhat generalizing what you said, but that's kind of what it sounded like. And I think that's great. The question is, are we going to do anything with it? I trust that you will, Doc, because I trust you. And Kathy, I know nothing but good things about you. I'm just suggesting in these meetings going forward, we should have outcome-based increases.
Well,
That's all.
just ask me,
And-
just ask me, because that's required by the state to use these monies to have key performance indicators. I can't give you. a
That's
key
great.
Performance indicator this year because we just started.
Maybe
They will be
someday.
due in December. So next year we will have that.
I think
So
that's
you're-
great. I think that's
This is
great.
our first year.
So your key
You're doing
performance,
great. You're doing good.
your key performance indicators then are based off of what you believe you're going to carry over into next year and the improvements that the health department's going to have, correct?
It'll be reevaluated for 2024 and 2025.
So,
Their board,
and I would agree
their
with,
board runs this, their
Right.
board decides.
right. So I would agree with where Eric is going. Then I would like to see for next year, those matrix that you're telling us, those are those numbers that you just said, hey, it's not all about numbers. It is all about numbers because the county folks need to understand this too. I mean, this is the broad reach that we haven't done in the past. This is explaining the departments where the monies go and how they're set up. And we're going to sit here today and we're going to talk about 25% increases. And people that didn't get a 25% increase over at whatever job they have, they're going to start looking at us going, are you guys crazy? So every year we should be moving this dial forward so that we can say, here's where health department was last year. Here's the matrix that they set, new department basically, and this is what they've improved on.
Those metrics will be all over the place because State
Right.
Department of Health is following that. Now, we have a different situation. We had basically last summer, no help. New help is all we had.
But you've fixed that this year. You've got new people in.
The new people.
You've put in these sizable increases. So next year, when this comes down, the justification for increases in salaries, you're saying you're basically getting everybody to where they need to be
They are.
with this increase.
They already are. And that's the justification for those increases. The board's behind this.
I get your boards behind it. I'm guessing they looked at Matrix too and said, that makes sense. You're comparing it to something.
You can look at some of those metrics or some of those metrics on things, but it's also going to be health and being able to provide health where some people can't get out. Our index as far as.
That is a matrix. That's a number. How many of those people have you increased saying, before we weren't able to go out to these houses and because we have this staff here.
Now, I don't know that that's going to be met necessarily with Health First Indiana.
It depends on the service you provide.
There are several other things that are, of course, they're looking to have, in the long run, less.
Guys, I'm not
people,
questioning the
yeah.
benefit of your department. I'm questioning the numbers that are in, why we see this significant increase and how do we see it. We know it's coming from the taxpayers. We got to justify, say, hey, we can understand that. That wasn't explained.
Well, I think the taxpayers should recognize that whenever you just have for example, a source of employment that's only there a few months and then they're gone, that's going to cost the county more again, because you have training programs. You have to, for example, send the environmentalist off. You can't do everything by Zoom.
Yeah.
You need to go to the training programs that he's been to.
And I think being that you're that standalone department, I don't know how you communicate with the public to say, hey, this is what we're doing. Maybe that's what your board needs to do, is put out a quarterly statement. These are all the improvements that we've done for the county, or these the services we provided to the county that weren't there last year, so that people could get behind that and understand that a little bit better.
Well, apparently we don't have a problem with the public. It's the county government that we have an issue.
I'd like to believe that was the
When we
truth, but
spoke in May at a meeting, it was show us how these people are trained up. Show us what courses have they been to? How have they gotten trained that they aren't now?
I
And then
can,
request your increase in wages,
sure.
so that we don't have people just jumping ship,
Yeah.
mid-ship or whatever.
I don't disagree with you that it's county government that's asking you for this on behalf of the people that put us here. So that is the public.
I do want to mention, just to go back to Eric, numbers do matter. They do matter, but in the reference you were talking about was my salary. And how does that like 5 patients?
It was a poor example, but
Okay, but I just it's not about, these partnerships are not about writing a check and your job's done. I spent a Saturday, 4 hours with doctors and nurses and publicists working on the advisory committee for Evans and Bloom. I mean, there's a lot of background work that goes into our jobs too.
I think that's great. So that's the kind of stuff, Kathy, that I was looking for, because again, I trust that you're doing good work. Everybody who sits here, I think, is educated enough that knows that Switzerland County finishes 88th or 89th in every health category out of 92 counties. So what you do is supremely important. At the end of the day, whether I'm sitting here or someone else is sitting here, we're going to have to slice and dice where the money goes. And when you come in front of us, the better prepared you are to say, here's the number of outcomes that we had this year, that year. Here's the things that we're doing to change what's going on in the community, and tell us the story of why. Give me a reason. Hell, we might do more. Might be more, because at the end of the day, we're gonna have to choose between bucket A, B, and C, and bucket B might be the big winner because they can tell the story about the impact. And the example I'll give you, and then I'll shut up, is child advocacy came before us, I think, 3 or 4 months ago in front of the council, and I forget the gal's name. But she went through a litany of impact that she had on Switzerland County, down to the detail of the individual. And so as someone who's responsible for, as a layperson, particularly given what you all do, having to make decisions and pull levers on driving funds or not, having that information is critically important to me. And maybe Todd's an expert in nursing care. I don't know. I'm not. So having that information will be powerful, whether it would be the auditor's office, the assessor's office, or nurse managed healthcare. I'll just rest there.
And you know what?
I have no
be
issue.
Happy to provide that as soon as I get it.
That's great.
Then
Thank
we're
you.
doing the work this year for our, what we will find will be our
Next
results
year.
for next.
That's great.
There you go.
But we have to do it now, and that's why we're asking. for the
Understood.
increase.
Understood.
Okay. I appreciate what you do and I appreciate you spending the time to explain it so that everyone here understands, because several of these people will be here next year. And so and then we have several people in the audience that are running for office. So it will help educate them also to how this all works, because it is quite complicated. And we really understand that. And I appreciate you spending the time to come in, because it's really their budget, what they decide. We don't get to pick that for them. And their board decides their salaries.
It really is, because the 1159 fund has had a big balance from some of these fees that were charged during COVID and one thing or another. It's had a big balance for a while. And then here we are getting $14,000 for this year, 2024, $14,000 on what, $245,000 budget? Yeah, we received 14,000 last year. The year before that, the budget was about $30,000 off, I think, as far as what was provided for the 1159 health fund compared to what we needed to run the place. So that budget is dwindling down. However, we've been conservative, tried to work within the budgets over the years. And that money is there from previous years to go ahead and give that raise, those raises, excuse me.
The only thing that scares me with taking money out of a kitty that's been there to give a raise is when that kitty runs out. And that's happened. I don't remember if it was the health department or the nurse managed clinic, one or the other,
Was it the health department?
gave raises because they had money in a savings. And so they could afford, their budget would balance because they had money in a savings account to raise
We don't have to
raises.
say.
Yeah.
Well, that money eventually runs out. And what do you do then? Knock people's salary down because you don't have the money to pay it? I mean, you don't ever want to get yourself in that kind of a position. So where you take the money from to give a raise is very, very important,
You've
because
also,
it has to be sustainable money that goes on for years. It cannot be something that can go away. Does that make sense?
yeah, the only thing was, this was money that had started all through there with the health department.
Yeah, it has to be sustainable for
1159
years to
health
come.
fund,
Where
which
it
is
comes from is very important.
Supposed to just receive county tax dollars into it. Along the way, it had some of those COVID dollars placed into it. So those COVID dollars that amounted to a couple $100,000 here and 150 in another fund and things of that nature, that stuff is dwindling because, for example, 2024, if you look on your DLGF info, is $14,000. $14,000 is all that came this direction from county tax dollars for 2024. And the year before that was about, I think it was about 35, I have to look at $40,000 less than what required to run the health department.
Anybody else have any questions for the health department? Thank you.
All right.
Okay, one thing we need to take care of, a little housekeeping here, is we need to do the minutes, approve the minutes for our September 19th budget meeting. You guys received those minutes? Need a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion's made by Eric to approve the minutes for the September 19th budget meeting.
To get the one with the time needed updated. typo.
Yeah.
That was,
That was in the council.
that was
That was
council
our
meeting.
joint, or that was a council.
That was,
Yeah, you got joint meeting, you got 8 PM instead of 8
Yeah, I
AM.
didn't. Let me just cross it out.
We know, but that's,
I mentioned, and then I got a.
I'm gonna put another stick on the side that says
Just
AM
initial.
now.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, we did a good job.
Okay, you can't even tell. I did write that, didn't I? Okay. Eric has made a motion to approve the minutes. I need a second.
I'll second.
Matt, second. Any discussion? We changed the 8 PM to 8 AM. All in favor? Pass. All right. We have a target now, guys, of cutting another $130,000 after everyone has turned in their budget changes. And you know, I didn't change my book. I should have done that. And we do have some huge salary differences in this. And I will say, I'm gonna say this on camera, I am, I'm glad that they made the cuts. I think that's the way that it should go. I think the department should be the ones making the cuts and not us. I'm just surprised that they went for operating expenses than the salaries that they were asking 25% increases on. That's the part that bothers me, because I think that they're going to come back and they're going to need what the operating costs. You know, how can you cut operating costs out of your budget and try to do, 25% increase on salaries?
because they'll just ask.
Then they're gonna have, because they're gonna run out of money in their operational costs. So, but almost every department head, not everyone, but most of them cut operational costs to get their 10% instead of the salaries that were.
Either that or some of their operational costs were inflated historically.
Well, that does happen, but like, for instance, in the sheriff's department, which is one of the larger ones, so I'm gonna go there first. He's got 25%, 19.5%, 21%, 20%, 20%, 22%, 20%. One is 28%. Some are only 3%, 5%, that he's asked for. One's a 4%, asked for an increase on their salaries. But everything that he's cut is an operational cost that he says he's gonna take out of his casino.
And that's a great question. What he's paying for out of his casino revenue, then I'll use overtime. I understand that the sheriff department pays overtime out of their portion of the casino revenue that's handed to them. Why isn't that in the general fund? That's an actual expense.
That's how it's, I don't know, that was like that before I came into office, so I don't know. That
They
was
used
something that
to
we would
pay
have to-
salaries out
Yeah,
of it. We
so
eliminated
I-
that.
Yeah, they don't pay salaries. Right now, that's how we're playing. They pay for their casino or out of their casino revenue, and then the commissioners pay for the highway overtime as well, out of casino revenue.
Okay, but
I-
I hear what you're saying, but from what we've seen, everything that we're in talking to Jackie too, you're supposed to have all your bills set inside your general fund, your operating cost inside your general fund. I know that you're telling me that's the way it's always been done, but that's not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to know where all your bills are, and your general fund is supposed to be what funds that. It's then up to who's gonna take that on. If the commissioners say, you know what, we'll pick it up with the casino revenue, then that's on the commissioners for us to go to them and ask them if they'll take that on. But right now, we have monies that are bills, such as overtime for the sheriff department, that are not actually in the general fund, so that the body of government, the fiscal body that manages the actual tax dollars of the county, we don't have a clear picture of what our true costs are, because they're hidden. Right?
True.
And now you're paying overtime with casino revenue that is falling down, it's going away. Well, we don't need the big surprise in a year, 2 years, 3 years, if that continues to happen, and now all of a sudden the sheriff is saying, I can't afford overtime, you guys need to take your $260,000, put it back in general fund. That's a big problem because we didn't know that it was there. So I'm looking, how do we move the dollars that are actual operating costs back to the general fund? Because if we take his overtime and put it back in here, boom, now we're $200,000 over. We're only hiding it from ourselves. This problem's gonna continue.
The highway department's not in the general fund.
But if you move them back in as well, don't not pay that through casino funds.
Yeah, they did allocate it for 25 in their funds, the overtime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they get the same percentage of casino funds annually? Like, is it?
The
is it-
sheriff,
Yeah,
yes.
same percentage every year.
Yeah. They have a line item. I could put it in there.
But the
And-
casino, with saying that, they had the same percentage and it's been consistent for them.
That's what I'm gonna say. Does it drop or
It drops if the casino funds
That's what I'm
drop,
saying.
their money drops. If the casino closes,
it's
they don't have it
potentially,
anymore.
so with the
So
downside of what we're
that's the
seeing this
reason
year,
for having the real numbers. The real numbers and not relying on casino funds to fund your county.
So the way it's been done in the past is that's just been the expectation. I agree with you. We have to fix that. That we can't keep passing it on to the next elected officials. That's what's been happening. We just keep passing it on saying, now it's your problem. Well, it's not a problem when
I don't.
everything is up, but when it starts to go down, like now what we're seeing, now it becomes a problem and now it's an inherited problem. So somebody's got to stop that.
so
That's
is that
got to be,
something that we'll look at here. You know, with the downtick that we've seen with the casino revenue, is that something that we'll look at as far as dropping the percentage that goes to sheriff's office?
I don't think we're looking at dropping the percentage that goes to the sheriff's office. They'll get what they get. We have to look at the reality of not running the county budget off anything other than what the county's tax money that it gets. We need to stop relying on the casino revenue funds. That really needs to be one-time expenditures. That needs to be capital expenditures only. You don't need to be using it for your salaries. You don't need to be using it for your overtime.
Well, it's, so
Because that is real things that we should be funding.
that was my next question, because like their overtime for 2024 this year, they're already negative, right? So
Well, that's because that's the line item that it gets paid out of. And then the money gets moved from the casino revenue
Casino revenue.
into the general fund. That's how that gets funded.
that's what I was gonna say.
Nothing is appropriated. It's always going to be negative because nothing is appropriated at the beginning of the year.
Right.
before that.
So they're just gonna move the casino funds to cover the overtime at the end.
Right.
Okay.
Well, he
Lisa,
does it periodically. He doesn't do it.
Yeah, as of August 9th, they needed $22,000 for overtime.
Because of the reality that you take $6 million of casino funds and cover operating costs.
Mhm.
And we can't fit all that inside of our general fund.
No.
Would it not make sense to grab a couple of categories and apply that rule consistently across all departments?
We have to
Bring a little bit in this year, bring a little bit in next year. And as the casino continues to dwindle, the brick and mortar funds, because the digital side of it, the online side is going to continue to explode. It's a national trend. It's not a phenomenon for Switzerland County. It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
But take little bites at the apple so that 3 years from now, if that thing does go another 10% next year and 10% after that, now you cannot afford.
No.
I mean, it's simple math. You can't afford what you're spending today less than 24 months from now if we have 2 more years of retraction like we've had. So if we do a little bit this year, and let's say we start with overtime. Commissioners have already done it. You pull the sheriffs in. Now no one has overtime in casino funds. That's a good first bite of the apple.
it would be.
Well,
And then next year you all decide there's another bucket, some sort of operational bucket that we're gonna pull.
Yeah, we have done that this year, Eric. That's exactly what we're doing. And where I get that from is that we did not take any money out of casino revenue to fund the general. We usually do 295,000. We've done none. That's been taken
Right.
away. So there's one bite we took. There's been nothing put in wastewater utility. That is back into general funds.
Correct.
There is no money being taken from casino revenue to put in taking care of this building, the tech building. That has been taken away. So we're biting that apple, as you're saying. The benefits fund is the only big whopper that should be in the general fund and
We
it's in
can't afford to
casino
pull in,
revenue.
right? At this
We
point.
can't afford to do that yet. We have to work towards that way. So anybody that's running for council, you have to start working towards getting that done. That is, but this year it can't happen. The emergency, medical, taking care of SER, that is another bite of the apple, that's in the general fund. That is something that we are working in the general fund to have that funded. And of course, we voted on possibly looking at doing the emergency tax in order to be able to afford that, because the general fund can't hold it.
Right, right, right.
But we have to find a way to do that. And then one thing that I learned in a budget meeting that I was in on the 25th is that the state of Indiana wants you to use the tools that they give you to fund these items. And if you don't, they give you tools to do it, which is basically taxing your people, which I hate with a passion. If you don't use the tools that they give you, they don't feel a bit sorry for you for not being able to fund your SER. We've given you a tax that you can impose on income tax to your residents to fund your SER. Well, the people that live here are the ones that use the SER. They should be paying for it. Basically, every one of us should be paying for it. And it's on a percentage of your income. So if you make a lot of money, you're going to pay a lot for it. You make a little bit of money, you're going to pay a little bit for it. So when you look at it in that way, it's really quite fair. So that is one thing that's coming out of casino revenue. But in order for us to afford it, we're going to have to impose that tax.
Yeah.
We're going to have to impose the tax.
Well, does it make sense to add the
SER.
sheriff's overtime?
We can't this year.
You can't at this point because
It's
it's already.
already been
it's already
advertised.
advertised,
and-
right?
So, but you can do, or he can do, whomever can ask for an appropriation at the beginning of January for, I don't know, let's say 25,000 starting out, I don't know.
Okay.
He can't do that.
We've kind of done the ones that we're in control of.
Right, right, right.
So
I understand.
we're leading the train on it to make it happen. And hopefully everybody will follow suit. One thing again, on the sheriff's budget, because this is so large, like I said, it's easier to go to the big guy first. For me, it is anyway. He needed to cut $86,000, $86,498 out of his budget. He cut 9. Sheriff's Department. When we ask each one to cut 10%, you know, his is a large one, so it's a lot of money. It's like the commissioners is a large one too. They had to cut a lot and they almost got there. You're not quite there, right, Jerry, on yours?
I don't think.
But it was about 10,000 off or something like that.
Yeah,
but it was
I understand.
very
I
close.
wasn't at the meeting, but
Yeah.
as far as I got.
I think it's very close. But he needed to cut 86,498 and he cut 9,000. But he has 25%, 19.5%, 21%, 20%, 20%, 22%, 20%, 28% on salaries that he didn't touch. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. For me, it's just like, I mean, and it isn't that I think they deserve to make more than other county workers. 100% believe that they need to make more per hour than the other county workers. They are our law enforcement. I think that their pay scale should be a little bit different. When the matrix went in a few years ago, I feel like that was a major mistake. Not the matrix itself a mistake. It was the way the matrix was done. It's been done very poorly. They have given, as their matrix, they ask for the matrix and then they give their people 1% increase on the matrix. And then they were dependent on the county giving a 3%, 4%, a couple years ago, we gave 6% raise. So he was dependent on us giving that raise to them also. And sometimes we gave a raise to everybody except what was on the matrix, remember? Because they had their system set up. Well, their system was set up poorly. And I don't care who gets mad at me about saying that. You're going to give your guy 1% interest or 1% raise because he's been there another year. That's terrible. That is, so their pay scale is behind at the sheriff's department only because of their own lack of doing it properly. And get mad at me, I don't care. That's exactly what they've done. They've done it improperly for so many years that now their pay scale is so far behind that he feels like he has to ask for a 28% increase on some of his people.
There's, and there's where not bringing the cost into line. Right now, if you're paying for traditional operating cost, annual operating cost and you're putting that money or counting on that money to be paid by casino revenue, asking for these types of increases for the county to participate in right now is a falsehood. Because the bite of the apple that you're talking about that we're bringing over, once we offer 25% increases, you live with that. You live with that. So when you look at the casino revenue supporting this year, $2.2 million of medical benefits, well, medical benefits, we've already heard, are going to go up somewhere between 4 and 6%. So that 2.25 is going to hit us closer to what? 2.4, 2.5 million. Now you're giving increases out, and what do you have next? You don't have a balanced budget. You have this fictitious bite of the apple that you're talking about, bring these costs back over. Meanwhile, you've given these raises, or you're paying overtime out of casino revenue. You don't have the cash to cover this.
I took a different approach. I'll address the sheriff's office first. You know, I just actually got online, did a bunch of research, and in Indiana, the average law enforcement officer income is $77,000 a year. You can look at the sheet. And of course, this is Switzerland County, it's a population of 10,000. You can look at the sheet and we're probably close to 50, a little under 50, maybe $48,000, $49,000 a year. So we're $27,000 short of the average.
Yes.
Now, should we do all that at once? I don't believe that we should. And should there be some view of, let's look at other counties that have 10, 12,000 people in them? Absolutely. But no matter how you slice it, we're in the bottom probably 10 percentile, meaning 90% of the counties pay more than we do. So my personal opinion is we should accommodate significant increases in the sheriff's office. Should it be 25%? Probably not. I did some math, and I'll save the math for the closing comment. Now let's take a look at the jail, sort of the same scenario, bottom 10%. Average correctional is right around $50,000. We're right around 40. So we're significantly out. And all this is available on ZipRecruiter. They pull all that information nationally, and then you can drill down by the state. If you take a look at, and by the way, as a hourly rate, because they're hourly employees over there, that's $19 an hour.
Yep.
Right, a little over 19.5 if you're corrections. Then you come across the street, and we have folks who are working somewhere between 34 and 36 hours a week, and you divide that into their salary, and you come up with your lowest paid clerk, which is someone who is in the assessor's office, the auditor's office, who is filing, answering phones, moving paperwork from this drawer to that drawer, making sure things get filed correctly, air conditioned, heat controlled, 15 holidays a year. By the way, you got to work every holiday across the street.
Nobody's trying to stab you with a fork.
Nobody's trying to stab you with a fork. That hourly rate at the lowest level is almost $22 an hour. So if you're making $22 an hour and you're asking for a 20% raise in this building,
What hours is that based on, Eric?
34. So 36, maybe it's 21.75, 21.50. And I'm assuming that, again, given the suit is settled, and we're going to likely have department heads who have their own handbooks, and they're going to set hours the way they'd like them, which was the whole reason for the suit. It's going to be closer to 34 than it is to 40. Right? So if that's the case, it would seem to me, if you look up clerical roles, secretarial roles in the state of Indiana, they're actually well compensated today. I'm not suggesting it, but you could legitimately be offering a fair hourly wage, which they should be hourly because those are hourly roles, not salary roles. You could actually freeze pay, not give any increases at the clerical level because they're well compensated today. They can't go anywhere else and make 22, 23, some of them more. If you paid them what they're asking, which is 48 grand a year, they're up around $28 an hour versus 19.5 across the street. So if you just run the math and you said, hey, we're only gonna give 3% increases in this building, because everyone's already well compensated, if you take a look at averages for compensation, that'll save you about 100 grand. So there's 100 of your 130. If you take the sheriff's office from the 20% increases that they ask for down to 10%, which is significant. If my math is correct, and these are all rough numbers, that saves you about 50 grand. So now you just, I mean, the meeting's over. We only need 130 meetings over to make those two decisions. And you give a fair increase to people who are well undercompensated in the marketplace, who put themselves in harm's way every day, who are required to work every holiday, who work 3-11s, who work midnights, who get 2 weeks of vacation, not up to 10 over here.
Inconvenient hours.
I mean,
Yeah, they don't get.
To me, it's kinda-
days of-
Do they get
Time
comp
off.
time?
They get holidays, they're just.
They get, well, they get time off and it's,
Yeah.
and it's use it
Somebody
or
else
lose it.
covers.
By the
Gotta be
end of the year,
staffed.
there's no save up.
the PTO offering is significantly different, is my point.
Well, I
The
think
job is
that
significantly
they
different.
pay-
The compensation from a relative to the marketplace, they are significantly lower than where we're at here, which is frankly a fair wage
Fair
today.
off.
That goes exactly with my comment that the matrix, when it came in, was a good idea. It was just handled completely wrong, completely improperly. They were not, raised significant enough to where every 3 or 4 years we're having to redo the matrix because they're so far behind. And then that just shows you how far behind they are. But then you're in a budget season where he needs to cut $86,000 out of his budget and he cuts 9, and it's all out of operational costs and nothing out of the salaries. I understand why he's doing it. It's just not realistic to do it that way.
Couldn't he cut his food budget? I hear they eat pretty good over there.
He did.
They-
Yeah.
Well,
25,000.
he cut the food, his
Cut it
20,
by 20%.
it was, he cut quite a bit out of it, but it was
Yeah, he's right over
to,
there.
it was, it's coming out of commissary or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you go to the budget meetings, I strongly encourage you guys that are going to be here in future years and anybody that's running to go to the AIC conference and learn these things. You will learn exactly where money is hidden from every department. There's a lot of money hidden in the sheriff's department through the commissary and stuff like that. They talk about it, they joke about it. Your levies, your tax levies on your property tax, the school makes sure that they're always in debt in order for you to not have your property taxes change a whole lot. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in these departments that control how much money council gets to spend in the first place. And it controls the tax levy on your people in your community. And it's really, really quite interesting. It's very eye-opening. So I encourage you guys to take advantage of that to learn how and why things are the way they are. With that being said, we need to decide. I had 11% increase in mine.
Over here.
Okay. I had 11% increase on mine for them.
For the
And-
sheriff's department.
Yes,
So-
for the ones that were over. Now, the ones that were 5% that he asked for,
Leave them where they are.
yeah, leave them where they are. The only thing that I have a real question with, I know they've talked about the IT director that they have over there. I think the county needs one IT director, personally. We pay for 2. We pay for one at the sheriff's department, which he makes more money than the officers do. That bothers me. I know he's been there a while, but he makes more money than the officers do, the ones that are in harm's way that I feel like need to be paid more. And then we pay for one for the rest of the county, and I don't know why. It's because he created an IT there to have for just his building. And then he makes a lot of money. So I don't want to pay for 2 IT people in the county.
Here's along with that, he also handles the GIS mapping. And then my understanding is he is also now in charge of the communications group, dispatchers.
So we have 2 people doing that because they have
So there's already someone who's down as the manager
Yeah.
for the dispatcher. So we have $110,000 of salary managing eight folks. So the question becomes, should we have only one manager for the communications group? Sheriff decides who that is. And if you choose the not IT guy, then the IT guy now has bandwidth to potentially pick up here where we spend $35,000 in the commissioner's budget with a part-time resource. And then you'd actually have the ability to give that person, some sort of accommodation from a salary standpoint and give them a $10,000 bump to pick up the other side of the road.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever
We're saying-
whatever the fair amount.
You're
is.
looking at it, if,
Then you save 25 grand.
Which is the other one you're talking about besides the GIS?
Parat?
What is it?
Emily,
if she's the supervisor manager over
Yeah.
911. You know, where you're going makes a lot of sense. I question whether or not, man, I know we've got Marty over here for the county, and then they have their own, and Kevin for the IT side. I think you need to look at that, if that's the direction we want to go in, and it sure makes sense. Your platform that you're operating off of, your IT should know how the county's platform operates. The question is, do we have qualified candidates in that position that can lead us to the conversion that we need to get to? Do they have this certification to do so? Or are we just putting a named individual in there that picks up the phone and calls Microsoft and says, can you bring down your specialist? And then we get charged for that.
Well, unfortunately, you have two people, a person and an outside resource. And I'm not in no way, shape or form suggesting that we remove anyone. If they're doing the job, I think you task them to continue to do the job. You pay them for the additional services. You put 20, 25 grand in your pocket because you take 10 of the 35 and give it to this individual. And then you just say, hey, look, you got to do the job. And then hold them accountable for doing the job. If they can't do the job, then you help them on to something that they can be more successful at.
We're not their department head, number one, so we don't get to decide whether he's doing his job or not.
Right.
Over there.
But it makes no sense
If,
for,
this was my company, I look at it, I see too much upper management.
Do we have the ability to, we probably don't have the ability to,
we have the ability not to fund the positions.
We
When we do,
need one
Yeah,
IT
I get it,
person,
I
whether
get
it's
it.
this one or the one that we have for the county, there needs to be one.
is anybody in disagreement with that? There's 150 people, and how many laptops are there? 50 laptops maybe? I mean, 50 laptops, a Wi-Fi. I mean, do we really need 2 IT resources for home?
What do you think, James?
Oh, I don't think we do. I mean, when we did the salary budgets with the sheriff, I suggested that we potentially make Kevin the IT director for the county, and we quit doing the contract services with Marty.
Makes sense.
The only question
I'm
was
okay
then,
with that if there's certifications
Let-
to actually be an IT person.
let him finish his thought.
the only then question was, does that person report to the sheriff, or does that person report to the commissioners? I'm of the opinion that they report to the commissioners and they serve the entire county.
So then you-
Never got any feedback from the sheriff on it, so I don't know what his opinion ultimately.
He's coming over to tell
There he is
us.
right there.
Good.
I mean,
We
I
got
think that makes
questions.
that makes a lot more sense than having multiples all over the county.
I agree.
So as far as the budgetary, where that puts us at, you're giving them more responsibility. So that would be the
they're talking
increase
about
of
the
pay,
IT.
but it comes out of what you're
Yeah.
paying currently.
And
Makes
he
more
gets, and he
sense
gets,
to me.
and he gets a bump in salary.
Yeah.
So let's just ask the gentleman, is it a possibility that Kevin could be the county IT as well as?
Oh, I think anything's a possibility, yeah.
I want to, does he have IT certifications?
He had some. But I don't know exactly which
I mean, I don't personally think we should pay $60,000 to somebody that doesn't have certification to be an IT director. And remember the company I gave you? Did you ever talk to that guy?
I've talked to him,
Yeah. I mean, there's,
He does Lawrenceburg's, different counties,
Yeah.
and some other counties. I haven't had in-depth conversations, just,
the
I
cost.
just haven't.
Yeah.
I think I listened to some of the recordings of the meeting earlier before we came, but I think there's a big misconception on what Kevin's role is at the sheriff's office.
That'd be helpful.
You seem to be hung up on this IT title. He was only given an IT title because over the years, historically, the sheriff's office didn't contract with anyone to take care of any computer issues, the online service, all that stuff. It was just something that he did because he had the capability to do it, and it didn't cost the department any money. That title was just added to him because of that initiative he took to take on those responsibilities. He has many other responsibilities on top of being IT. He's the 911 coordinator, which is a totally different set of responsibilities aside from dispatch supervisor. Those are two totally different roles.
We have been pretty lucky over there for many, many years, because even prior to him, Roy was over there and those guys just.
Don't you already have someone there that
They had
does
a
that,
good
though?
computer background. I mean, we was fortunate enough to have somebody in-house that could do 95% of all of our IT stuff just because they knew how to do it.
Would he,
They're talking about, him being the same as Emily. Do their jobs, like she's over the communications part?
She's the dispatch supervisor.
Yeah.
so he has just
911
911?
coordinator is a totally different role.
That's
This says communications director.
But Emily,
Supervisor, director.
For dispatch.
Yeah, for dispatch.
Well, it says falls under 911.
Well,
Hmm.
that's another thing.
It's
Her salary is
12.22.
out of the statewide 911 because it qualifies to be paid out of that.
she
So it
and
doesn't have to
another,
come out of the general fund.
you have
Right,
another
right.
dispatcher that gets paid.
But the reality is she's
Yeah,
managing dispatch, not Kevin.
yeah.
Correct.
So does Kevin, my experience on IT people is they're, with all due respect to Kevin and everyone else is in the role, they're a different bird. They think different than us. That's why they're good at it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And frankly, a lot of those folks get good at it because they're hired in, they went to school for HR and somehow they wind up in the IT department at Humana and they're there for 20 years and they're unbelievable from a technology standpoint, but they don't have a lot of certifications.
Exactly.
So that's just been my experience. Now, if you can find someone with certifications, obviously that'd be a better scenario. But if we have someone who's capable and he had a desire and there's an opportunity for him to make more money as well, is there a scenario whereby we can get rid of a resource and he could take that role? Now that leaves you uncovered on 911. So then the question becomes, is Emily able to do that as well?
She's cross-trained some of that with the addressing and different things. I think it's definitely a possibility. Yeah, like I said, but like I said, I don't know to what extent. He's got a stack of certifications. He has some, I do know, but
But if,
he's just been there and.
if his salary comes out of his department, basically, because it goes to the commissioners, that helps his budget a bunch.
Well, I think the way I
Well,
see
the
it,
911 coordinator works at the sheriff's office.
right. I mean, I guess the way I see it, the bottom line is the objective is you're trying to get all of these other people's salary to where you think it needs to be competitive.
Right.
You're gonna have to make,
Somewhere.
We have to make a
you're gonna have to
change.
make some type of changes in order to make that happen. You're gonna have to think outside the box. To answer your question, if he becomes the IT director for the county, then yes, that salary would go to the commissioners. That become part of our costs and we would, but then that position would report to the commissioners.
And that,
So,
you're right, that'd be
then
one
you
way
have
to
to-
increase the salaries.
then you have a vacant, if you will, set of responsibilities in 911 that you have to figure out how to cover.
But before you, and I think that's a great idea, that's a good balancing act, you're moving those dollars, you're implementing a program that increases salaries. But I know you weren't here earlier, again, we pay for things in this county in different funds that are not a part of the general fund, but should be a part of the general fund. Your overtime is paid out of that casino. So we said we wanted to bring a bite of that apple back, little at a time, right? That's what we were conversing. It's this council's job to start that process. So when the next council steps in, they take another bite of the apple next year and another bite so that the actual dollars get into the general fund. If that's the way that we look at things, move the IT guy to the county, you start to build up on the amount of money you're going to offer for salaries. You also have to take a bite of where those operating costs that aren't in the general fund start to come back into the real budget. Have to do that. That's how a budget operates. You can't have all these shelves that say, well, that's gift money and we're using our gift money to cover our overtime. It's not real.
Agreed.
But in his position, you're either paying him to do a dual capacity position by saying you're still gonna be the 911 coordinator and you're gonna do the IT for the county, or you're gonna be, we're asking you to be the IT for the county, but then they still have to hire a new 911 coordinator.
Not necessarily hire a new one. If-
Yeah, I mean, and those are just a lot of my thoughts and some of the things you hit on, because I mean, obviously 90% of his cup of tea is where he's always been for 25 years and knows the jails software and the sheriff's side and all that.
How does the 911 get covered? I'm sure it's covered 24/7, right?
Yes.
So how does that, You got
He's
other-
on call because, something goes, servers go down, something goes down in the middle of the night, he's got to be there. That's why he is always.
so he's always the person?
He's the man
Okay.
that keeps that running. That's why he's always worked out at the sheriff's office.
When a server goes down, that's IT, right? It's not 911.
Well, there's servers for 911, there's.
Yeah, but it's
But
IT
still
job
IT.
to get the server back up,
Yes,
not a 911 job.
exactly.
That's IT.
But whoever the 911 is still going to be on call as well, right?
Yeah,
It's a 24/7.
yes.
But I think to eliminate any concerns relative to that, obviously, we would continue to call it a direct IT director position. It would be a salaried position and in a salaried row, you're on call 24/7,
Yeah.
365. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's salaried no matter where you work, right? So,
And you probably heard part of it before, 10% of your budget's 86,498, and you basically cut 9, and it was all with operating, things. So that, you had quite a bit to go for that. So if
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
able
but
to
typically-
change,
But typically, our line items for operating is always,
yeah, that's
Right
what,
there.
that's concerning to me, to take out of operating instead of the, salary increases.
well, because the salary increases obviously we gotta have operating, but the salary, we're not gonna have to worry about operating, we don't have to quite work on it. We lost 2 dam fund deputies this year, and just Tuesday afternoon, I had another veteran officer walk into my office and shut the door, who's informed me that he has applied for another position somewhere, and he's not only a veteran officer, he's one of our certified field training officers. We sent him to school to be our taser instructor, he's certified in that, and he's also certified to do blood draws in an event for OWIs. And
Which makes him valuable somewhere else.
well, every one of those guys, we invest a lot of time, training and everything else into those. They're county assets and investments.
Well, I'm trying to help your budget out here
Yeah.
and still give a
Oh,
significant
trust me,
raise.
we sit over
So,
there and we compare. notes.
one
We
IT
look at the
director-
Salary,
Helps his budget tremendously, and it helps the county. Financial wise.
You're saying removing that IT director position on the sheriff department, moving over to the county helps him.
Yes.
well, I think to your earlier
But then
point,
you're bringing it to the commissioners to have their,
They've already got some money in that. So if you think about,
right,
they already pay and they don't pay
you've got
somebody.
35,000 there that you're gonna gain if you do nothing.
That's a
on
that's a
average,
more
how much
money
do
on
you use
them,
for
but
it?
it's a significant
On
change for
average,
his budget,
35,000
which gets him closer
How often do
to
you
where
use
he needs to be in
Every-
order for us to get
every
significant
month.
raises in this department.
This-
I want to keep that
Probably
particular
can't
individual
really
where
have-
he's at. in my office.
They only gets us for about
That's where he's worked 25, 26
No, I was
years.
35.
So he can help out
You
on
don't
the
want
other.
to do that.
If he can help out a little bit on the
He's
business
somewhere
side,
there
that's
that's
great,
gonna be
but I want him to work for me. Like he always has.
Right. Did you hear that?
All right. My bad. Go ahead. Can you say that again? We were,
He does not want to, he wants Kevin to work for him. He doesn't want